you all for staying. I know it's a long night on a Monday night, but we're thankful that we were able to see both of these movies. So I want you just both to say your film, and then, you know, none of us like to see, well, I can't say that because I don't know your political affiliations, but it's sometimes hard to see Donald Trump's face over and over again but it is a reality, and we are coming up to that reality again in 2024, and we're not done with these issues yet. We're not done with the issues of the income inequality that COVID has created, that you know, George Floyd's murder has created, and it's something that we have to continue to fight against, and continue to have movies like this, and continue to remind people that just because we're not all wearing masks anymore, it doesn't mean that all of these things that both of these films talk about aren't happening, and what's our responsibility as filmmakers, as storytellers, to help continue to keep these stories in the front of everyone's mind, especially as we go into 2024. So I would love for you just both to talk about your sort of like impetus for making the films that you did, sort of where these communities are now, and what's sort of like the next step for you all to help keep those stories going. So, Sabrina?
Hi, I'm Sabrina Aviles. I'm the director of the short, Raising the Floor.
Hi, I'm Cece Chan. I'm the producer and the writer of the storyline of 2020 Chaos and Hope. The idea of the creation of this film originated by me, so go ahead,
So just very briefly, the piece that you saw was actually a commissioned piece by the Shaw Foundation. And my colleague, who's one of the co-producers here, Jenny Alexander, she and I had been filming in Chelsea since 2020. We did a short for PBS, and then we're still working on a feature. But the Shaw Foundation approached me and Jenny and asked us if we would take a break from that and work on a film about the Chelsea Eats. So that's how that came about.
So I was in lockdown in my office on Wall Street. My day job is a private equity investor for decades. But then I also have been spending 20% of my time supporting charitable causes. So those of you who know me would not see this as a surprise that I would end up making a film like this. And then, because I was there all by myself in my office, 8 to 10 hours a day, I started to think more about how did we get here as a nation, as Americans. And this was not just affecting ourselves, Americans, but really people around the world. So did a lot of research and work. Gideon, my assistant, was in Virginia, and you know there were nights when we stayed until 1, 2 a.m. in the morning cranking stuff out. And the result was this film. We started filming it during COVID. Really, it's a miracle that we got into these hospitals. So the filming started in January 2021, and then it ended October 2022. We self-funded, and we have been showing this film around the world. When we showed it in London, in southern France, in Toronto, in other places, people were sobbing. Because this is a universal story. Of course, we highlighted what happened in the US, but the message really is about failure of leadership, both public and private.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what both of them talk about. I mean, in the whole thing, you talk about income inequality, and we just had that other film that Sabrina was producing about the income,
the freedom budget,
the freedom
by MLK.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it in both of your films, I mean, that's one of the things that we really see is this inequality. And
I was just going to say, you know, I think it is true that your film is about the failure of leadership, but I think in my film, there are a lot of parallels. With my film, this is one thing, you know, we could have, because this was a commissioned film, we could have done it very cut and dry, but Jenny and I had been there shooting for a year now, and we really started to, we understood the heartbeat of what made Chelsea what makes Chelsea. And for me, especially being the daughter of immigrants, technically one is immigrant, one wasn't, but, and my father being a bodega owner, I just saw, I saw his story in many of these people that were suffering. So I think that the difference is that we wanted to tell a story, one that had heart, and two, that showed a community activized. And how, in this case, the politicians, the government did not fail their residents. They really worked together with the community to create this program. So
I think that's a great point. In fact, as one of the vice chairs of the Dean's Council at the Kennedy School, I know the people well, so, and I'm actually seeing the dean tomorrow morning, so I'm going to tell him how proud I am of Jeffrey Lieberman and all the people.
And we actually had a screening at Harvard.
Great, yeah,
As
did we.
Yeah.
And of course, when I asked Larry to participate, he immediately said yes, not even knowing what the theme of the movie was. Nobody did know, like Dr. Fauci, Adam didn't know. We just said that this is the film to make the world better. Like, we want to create the world that we want to live in. And I want to give Sabrina a tremendous amount of credit because it was a very moving film that you made. And you're absolutely correct. The whole point of making films and telling stories that we come out, right? There's no point in shining a light on historical or present events if we don't believe we can make it better. Anand Orange, Lisa, right, said that hope is an empty emotion. Aran said that we need to go into action. Well, I think that without hope, people are not mobilized into action. So the whole point of certainly 2020 Chaos and Hope, as well as Sabrina's film, is that we shine a light on the issues. You can't fix the problem without knowing what the problems are. And then together as a community, we say, how are we going to fix it? So it's really a film about activism.
Right, and I mean, I think with your film, Sabrina, too, right, it was in this case, it was the officials that were like, we have to do something, and we have to, and they were fighting, against, in some sense, City Hall, who didn't want to necessarily do the
county.
Yeah, what do you mean we're going to give people...
He was a Trump supporter, by the way.
Yeah, like, we're going to give people cards to do what? To live, but I think that, what we realize is that we do, that, like in the Chaos film, and it basically said, this crisis brought people together in a way, and crisis does that in a way. And that's what was beautiful about the Chelsea film too. So for the Chelsea film, it was the politicians that were helping, and in your film, it was, it was the medical profession, right? It was sort of like no one, doctors aren't necessarily trained to do that kind of work. You're trained to fix you and get up and leave, and then you walk away and come back for your next checkup, and for the most part, right? That's what you're taught in medical school. And this pandemic sort of changed the way people feel and touch each other and understand just our humanity of what we should be doing and what we could be doing.
I also want to say that I think both films showed really the power of grassroots organizing. Mm-hmm. It's, when you have a government right now that doesn't really get anything done, points fingers, continues to perpetuate this disinformation, the change has to start at a grassroots level. Mm-hmm. And it starts with youth, it starts with political organizing, and I really have great faith in this country that that's going to happen, because as much as there is disinformation, we have a lot of young people out there who are really savvy and also they have innate humanity, which I think will, using that word again, will activate.
Yeah, I mean, there's empathy. They have, you actually see compassion and empathy for other people.
And that really is the core of why so much have been spent and all the resources and energy being put into this film. You ask what's going to be next. Next is we're going to use this film to go around the country and sign up voters. Mm-hmm. This is very strategically put together. We're going to Georgia, we're going to all the key states. And after people watch this film, it's about agency. And it's e pluribus unum. Of course, the doctors need to be shouted out, and I'm so honored that we're giving them homage, but it's really about how people came together as individuals, right? Not based on skin color, not based on background, we're human beings, and that is the message that I always want to amplify, is we're just human beings. And if we can just step up and help each other, whatever the capacity, in Chelsea is an amazing outcome. And that film should be shown around the world, right? Again, I will recommend that when we have our Dean's Council gatherings. Because people come up from around the world to go to Harvard or Oxford or wherever, and we can learn from each other as human beings. That's a classic example of when it works, right? Many of those people do indeed take courses at Kennedy School, I'm sure. But then they go back to the grassroots community, and it's real results, right? And so this is existential. I've spent decades, as Judy Freeman knows, supporting the collection of survivor testimonies, right? My involvement at the Shaw Foundation, which was started by Steven Spielberg 30 years ago, is to collect Holocaust testimonies. I also support Facing History for over 20-something years now, right here in Frontline. And it's about how do we work with each other. I'm a deep supporter of fighting for civil rights and voting rights. Cornell's a dear friend, Deval Patrick, and so many people, not only in the US, but around the world. It really is about e pluribus unum. We're all just human beings. Regardless of color of skin, regardless of background, regardless of ethnicity, we have to come together and create the world that we want to live in.
Yeah. I mean, that's so beautiful, exactly. And I think that we all are in this business to do that, right? I mean, it's, and to be able to use film as a catalyst. And Sabrina and I talk about this because we run a shared stories film program together with the Boston Asian American Film Festival, but it really is about lifting up these stories and using them to activate people into change.
And how the stories, whether you're Asian American, African American, or Latino, there's a commonality and a common thread in those stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even for white folks, right? We're all human beings.
Right,
and very sadly, many of them, whether they're in the Allegheny Hills or West Virginia, they're suffering just as much.
Sure.
This is as much as a class and systemic failure and unfairness thing in our country, in our beautiful country, as this is about color of skin.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just gonna open up to that.
You guys are so first of all, I want to say thank you to you.
I'm going to moderate it now.
Right?
So I'm surprised that we're not just up here chatting to each other. No, does anybody have any questions?
No, but look at this crowd though. This is a self-selecting crowd, right? I always
Yes.
say that people show up because they choose to, right? We choose to do something about the situations in which we find ourselves. So we rely on self-selection.
Yes?
I just wanted to note the powerful women, both the women here presenting this, but also like the three of you, and then also the women in the films who were actively involved in their communities and beyond.
Yeah, was that a choice for both of you to do that?
For me, again, I am currently working on a feature film about Chelsea, but not this. But one of the people we will be focusing on is Gladys Vega, and she's a force. She's definitely is a force, and a lot of people in Boston know of her, and she's always done the work. She's been at La Colaborativa, which is a nonprofit she runs since she started as a secretary, and now she's the executive director. And she's a force, and so it turns out that the people that we're featuring are mostly women, and it just seems to, like, I don't know, it's like that Latina woman, with the chutzpah, it's a coincidence, but I would say that out of in Chelsea is just, and also I would think also the current city council now is mostly women. I don't know if you remember, there's a scene where Lourdes, I'm the only Spanish speaker, and then you see like all these white faces. That's in the city hall. It's all the old city councilors. It's just a sea of white men. And so now the city council in Chelsea is mostly women.
Yeah, it's reflecting the community. Right.
Absolutely,
So, as I said, my day job is a private equity investor, and I've been doing it for 38 years, but I also have been supporting educational causes and philanthropic causes for 38 years, so with a parallel track. The focus is on just improving human behavior, right? I've spent decades supporting the collection of survivor testimonies, whether it's from the Holocaust or other atrocities. And if we don't catch it early enough, it's gonna end up there. Fill in the blank, it doesn't matter what country, what color skin, what ethnic background. So I'm just really actively trying to reduce pain and suffering. I never say never again, because human beings are going to butcher and pulverize each other over and over again. But there is hope in reducing, right? In other words, if 2 million people were to get killed and raped next year, let's try to work hard to reduce that number by 200, by 20,000. So it's
Well, I mean,
very
it's right,
practical
'cause-
focus.
And life is cyclical, right? So, but if you don't know your history, then you're gonna keep repeating it.
Exactly.
That's the thing. So film does that, gives that opportunity for you all to have these films and take them all over the world so that you're constantly reminded. Like I said, we don't wanna constantly listen to that voice, but we need to, because we have to understand, we have to remember what that meant. We have to remember what 2020, 2019, 2020, 21, 22 have done to all of us, as you say, in humanity, because of a failed system. And we're still in the midst of that, and we still have a lot of work to do. But you're right. It's like, if we can reduce that by a lesser number, if we get more people to vote, if we can get less people, off of income, off of public welfare or something, then if we can get more people, able to live and get a livable wage, then all of that means something. And all of that is directly related to the work that you're doing.
Absolutely, and it is global. Imagine if somebody else won in 2016. The outcome would be very different. Maybe we wouldn't have a war in Ukraine. How many people got killed and butchered? So we are literally running out from now until 2024 election. This is existential. This is impactful, because
Right.
The collection of survivor testimonies are very familiar to some of us.
Of course. Well, yeah. I mean, exactly. So, do we have any questions? Go ahead.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, Susie. I just want to make a comment that I suspect is a perspective maybe you considered or maybe not. What's amazing about this film that you've made, and the Chelsea film is also spectacular, but the film that you made, Susie, gives such clarity to 2020. From a pedagogical perspective, and I'm a teacher, just the timeline ticking at the bottom, right? We all live there. We're adults for the most part in this room, so we all live it as adults. But I'm a teacher of teenagers, and we're seeing the other side of that now, right? We're in 2023, and the kids are still struggling.
Oh, yeah.
Because they lived that year. They don't have the clarity on it. This film needs to be seen in every classroom in America.
Yeah.
And in particular, and quickly, because they're living with the repercussions of it. We know that depression rates, anxiety, skyrocket. Young people, I agree that I have incredible faith in them, but they have to get through their stuff first. And they're not through their stuff. So what you did here is you juxtaposed all the crazy, horrific, grief-stricken aspects of 2020. You ordered them. You clarified them. You told human stories amid it that other human beings will be able to identify with.
Yeah, thank you.
And you're offering something super important, so congratulations.
Thank you, Judy. So, Judy spent decades teaching survivor testimony, right? Again, e pluribus unum. I want to do similar things, what we have done for Holocaust survivors, for the Black community and other communities, people of color, because it's the same thing, right? I have been an advocate for increasing civil rights and voting rights, as all my friends know, for people of color for decades. This is all part of the same mission, if you will.
Right.
And what Judy's saying is that we're setting a time capsule. right? The film is gonna be watched 100 years from now, and you're like, what happened to you guys in 2020? How did you behave like that? And also, it's a very important message for our friends around the world, because bad actors and good actors, if you will, are all playing out of the same playbook, right? Whether it's Oban out of Hungary or any other places. And it is really a lot bigger than just we Americans suffering this thing.
Yeah, but I think it's also important to show the resilience, you know, and I think that, you know, show the resilience of the doctors and and the patients, and then Chelsea, the community, because that's what's going to move us forward, is the resiliency of people understanding what went on, understanding how their communities were falling apart, and all of us coming together to make sure it doesn't happen again.
You know, it's funny, you're right in that COVID is like, the numbers may be down, but the impact of COVID is still affecting Chelsea.
Yeah.
They actually opened up another Chelsea Eats program earlier this year. I think this time it only lasted 3 or 4 months, and there was I think there were only 600 families, but there's still a huge amount of food insecurity, because things have not quite gone back to where they were prior to 2020. So it's there, you know, and actually La Colaborativa, Gladys's organization, they are now in the food insecurity business.
Wow.
You know, they've expanded their offices, and they have, part of it is a distribution center for them to give out food. So they're officially in it now. They were prior to that, they were about workforce training and education. Now that's another part of their mission.
That's fantastic. I mean, I think communities from around the world, government should learn from the Chelsea's example. And this is what we say, proof of concept, right? You get something working in one area, it could go national,
Right, exactly.
and it could go
It's a great
global.
model.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think they actually are and have been. I mean, I know that Tom Ambrosino, who's no longer there, he was the city manager. Once he implemented Chelsea Eats, he got calls from all over the United States saying, how did you roll it out? What are you doing? You know, because he was doing it, and at the same time that other cities were struggling with the same issues. So,
And continue to struggle.
and continue, yeah.
Any other?
I just wanted to say thank you to both of you. They're both amazing films.
Thank you.
And also, if you could just discuss in some detail how you're gonna get these out to make a difference in the world, each of your films.
Okay.
And that's a really good confirmation, because she's quite an accomplished filmmaker.
Yes, there.
Thank you so much. It means a lot, Lauren. Actually, we're pretty much finishing up the film festival circuit. We're actually going to be at a film festival in New York. In July. That'll probably be our last one. We got picked up by Ovid TV, which is a streaming service, and that starts in July as well. And Canopy. Canopy is available. Basically, Canopy is available for it'll be picked up by Canopy. So if you want to see it, you just need a library card. You go to your local library.
Oh.
And we recently showed the film at the big conference, which is the Basic Income Conference, which is a huge conference that happens once a year. We showed it in Chicago in early June. Packed house, over almost 400 people. They love the film, and the executive director of the conference wants to work with our team to develop a curriculum so that the film can be used as an instructional tool all over the United States. And I'm going to be helping with that, and I'm super, super excited about that. So it's doing what we hoped it would set out to do, is using it on so many different levels, because you can talk about basic income, you can talk about community organizing, you can talk about so many, you can talk about immigration with our film, with our little film. So
It's not little at all. It's very impactful. I found myself
It's short.
being very moved, and it was actually very well made. So I'm so happy that we get to be coupled together. So to answer your question, we're represented by UTA. We like to be on Netflix or Amazon. The origin of this film has always been international impactful, right? Because at this moment in time, the US still leads as that shining light on the beacon hill, as it were. but just, right, as President Biden said, we just barely made democracy survive. So we're keenly focused. There's going to be a lot of screenings around the world running up to the election. It's all about practical focus and outcome. We will screen it in the White House. It's just a question of working out the scheduling. And we will screen it around the world. We have already done so in Toronto. We can go back to Canada anytime. They're very welcoming of the film. We will screen it in France. President Macron will support it. Again, it's because of this universal message. People are traumatized. It's not just about COVID. I'm so happy. Pandemics will come and go. We're talking about systemic failure, right? Systemic failure. It's gone on too long. How many times, how many decades have African Americans or people of color been shot in the back? And it's just not acceptable. And we people have to say, this community, our country, no more, not acceptable. So that is, I believe, the drive that we want to have to gather more and more people to say that. And the protest, I think, was a really heartwarming thing that we saw. Despite the fact that it was a pandemic, people came out. You heard the largest, this kind of protest, multidimensional, and ethnicity of all sorts came together, and that is that common humanity that Lisa was talking about. So that is, you're gonna see this film around the world, and we wanna just get people to sign on to support it. We created it as an asset, right? So if you're running for Congress or Senate, use it for free. Go and use it to fundraise. If you are Macron, you wanna make a statement how I need to reform the retirement age because we cannot have this unsustainable path anymore, go ahead and use it. So that is the idea, and that's what we're going to focus on for the next couple of years.
Thank you.
Good.
I just want to say thank you for the work you both are doing because it's something that we need. It must
I think that exactly, that's a great way to end on it. And I think that, both of you are committed to this work. It's not like, Sabrina, you've done so many films, to do that, to lift up, to bring voice to the voiceless, to all those things, and you as well. I applaud you both for continuing to do that work because we need it. We need to see it, we need to hear it, we need to be reminded of it all the time, as I said before, so we don't repeat history. And if we do repeat it, it's less than what it was the first time it came around. So, and especially, we wanted to bring these films just like we're bringing Kenyatta tomorrow, because we are going into an election year, and it's really important for us to remember what happened. And if we forget about it, we'll be like, oh, yeah, I'm not gonna go, or people will say, I don't really wanna go vote. So we need to be in those communities, these films need to be in those communities that have been most impacted.
I was gonna say, as I was watching your film, I just kept on thinking, I had forgotten that all those things happened in one year.
See, yeah.
I was like, oh, yeah, no wonder,
We are where we are right now, because there were so many things that happened,
so
right?
many things.
To just disrupt.
And I would say that if my crew and I did make this film, I would want somebody else to make this film, right? Because indeed, all these things happened to us. And we gotta look back and digest. And without identifying the problems, we can't address it. I've been doing this for 38 years, right? Supporting the improvement of human behavior, practically, and how do we do it? Of course, through education. And Judy, to your point, of course, we're gonna work with schools. So all the universities have already reached out to us. They want to screen Georgetown, USC, and then Oxford and around the world. We want young people to learn. And we want them to be activists, right? Again, I just want to say thank you because you self-selected. You chose to come here tonight and you're staying, right, beyond 10 because you care, right? Just like all of us
let you go.
care. Exactly, right? So that is why, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Northeastern. Thank you, guys over there.